So, Cyberpunk 2077 just dropped the Phantom Liberty expansion, and I thought today would be a good time to reflect back on Cyberpunk 2077 and see how far the game has come in the past 3 years since release. Ever since this game launched back in December of 2020, it has quickly become one of my favorite games of all time. And I realized that at launch, Cyberpunk 2077 was an unforgivably broken mess. With the unmitigated amount of bugs present in the game at release and the atrocious performance on consoles, especially last-gen consoles, it's clear that millions of gamers were misled or even outright lied to about the state and the quality of this game. But here's the thing. Even though that this game had a horrible release, I still loved it anyway. The atmosphere of Night City is one that I just love to get lost in and one that I continually find myself jumping back into. And now it seems like after 3 years with the Phantom Liberty expansion coming out and even more importantly, the Cyberpunk 2.0 update from CD Projekt Red, it looks like this game is literally getting a second chance. So if you've been hesitant as to whether you should give Cyberpunk 2077 a try even after all this time, I'm here to tell you you should. We all remember how rough the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 was back in 2020. I mean, it actually got so bad that CD Projekt Red got sued by their investors because they were misleading in the marketing and because they misled their shareholders. And we witnessed something that we don't really see in the gaming industry at all. And I personally don't remember seeing this occur at all in the entire time I've been playing video games, where Sony actually removed Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation Store and issued refunds to everyone who had bought it on their platform. I mean, I don't think I've ever witnessed a fuck up that bad in the entire 2 decades that I've been playing video games. This deception from CD Projekt Red, and it is a deception to be fair, they did mislead their consumers and their shareholders. This deception caused them to receive overwhelmingly negative reviews and untold financial consequences as a result of their actions. To say nothing about the hit that their reputation took. I mean, after putting out a critical hit of a game such as The Witcher 3 and then releasing an unmitigated broken mess, it kind of makes the community question themselves whether they should put their trust in you as a developer or not. But I will give them credit. Even though CD Projekt Red was beset on all sides by negative criticism, lawsuits galore, they never stopped supporting Cyberpunk 2077. Through all the hate mail and the negative press and the infamy that they gained through the bad release of Cyberpunk, they never abandoned the development of the game. And the reality is, a lot of other AAA developers just would. I'm looking at you, EA. And now, almost 3 years later, we actually have a fully realized version of what the developers wanted to release in Cyberpunk 2077 originally. Now, they weren't able to meet every goal that they had set out to achieve with this game. One of the biggest features that ended up getting scrapped from Cyberpunk was the multiplayer mode that CD Projekt Red had been hyping up even months after release. I mean, imagine being able to cruise around Night City completing fixer contracts with your friends online. That would have been pretty cool, although I think I'd prefer it this way. Cyberpunk 2077 has such a compelling single-player story and narrative, and it plays so differently than I imagine any other multiplayer game would that I really can't imagine it with a multiplayer aspect to it. And I think forcing the developers to add on a multiplayer mode to this game would detract from their vision, and it would backfire on the community, and they would end up not liking Cyberpunk as much. Cyberpunk 2077 feels like a compelling single-player narrative, and especially when you have a single-player RPG, I feel like when you have a multiplayer mode that's forced onto it, or if we were to force CD Projekt Red to add a multiplayer mode onto this game, I feel like it would detract from the charm that Cyberpunk 2077 naturally has. There's something to be said for live service games and having a multiplayer mode for a lot of different single-player games that have mainly a single-player story, but they also have a multiplayer mode tacked onto it. Uncharted did that, The Last of Us did that for a while with the factions mode, but I think for Cyberpunk, it feels right with just being a single-player story. I mean, that's part of the charm of it. Speaking of charm, let's talk about Keanu Reeves. No, but seriously. In my opinion, Johnny Silverhand is one of the most compelling characters in the game, and there are a lot of moments when I find myself liking him more than anybody else, even V. Come to think of it, I'm having trouble recalling any character NPCs that didn't leave a lasting impression on me when I interacted with them. Granted, not all of these impressions that they left were positive. I mean, that guy Fingers, who's the Ripper Doc when you're looking for Evelyn, yeah, that was not a positive experience for anybody. But I'm saying that all the character experiences in the game were memorable. Whether I hated them, loved them, thought they were funny or sad, I always felt like this character that I was speaking to was unique and wasn't just some carbon copy of a different NPC in the game. Judy, Pan Am, Jackie, Misty, Hanako, Rogue, Johnny Silverhand, and even V themselves. It's crazy how well I can recall the first time meeting each of these characters, even to this day 3 years later. And now, with Idris Elba as Solomon Reed playing a major part in the Phantom Liberty expansion, I feel like we've come full circle with these sort of memorable character performances that are delivered in this game. I mean, Idris Elba just steals the show here, let's be for real. I feel like I also have to acknowledge the impact that Cyberpunk Edgerunners had on the recovery of Cyberpunk 2077. Granted, the game was doing okay on Steam and other platforms before Cyberpunk Edgerunners released, but I feel like there was a real moment when Cyberpunk Edgerunners released and there was a huge surge in popularity for the Cyberpunk franchise. I mean, the quest director for Cyberpunk 2077 even said, "It's fucking good to be back," right after Cyberpunk Edgerunners released. That was the critical point where I found myself realizing, oh wait, people are actually realizing that Cyberpunk 2077 is a good game now, and it's not just a bug-riddled mess anymore. It's definitely come a long way from the abysmal state that it launched in 3 years ago. Although, to be fair, it's basically a new game now. The 2.0 update that CD Projekt Red released alongside Phantom Liberty overhauls so many different aspects of this game that it's actually almost unfair to still call this game Cyberpunk 2077. They've rebuilt the perk system from the ground up, redesigning every single skill tree, and providing passive buffs to your character when you do certain activities such as hacking or shooting. You can also refund ability points for free now, so you can completely respec your character on the fly, which I think is amazing. Cyberware is now how damage is reduced on the player character rather than clothes, which are basically just cosmetics for your character now. Overhauled enemy and NPC AI and a completely redone policing system also provide a greater feeling of immersion and difficulty. Also, 2 words: vehicular combat. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And there are a couple little sprinklings and tributes that they paid to Cyberpunk Edgerunners throughout the game as well. There's a couple little Easter eggs here and there. I won't spoil anything, but there's some locations of the game that pay tribute to people like Lucy and David, and even Rebecca in the game as well, if you haven't been playing this game in a while. You can actually see that David and Rebecca both have little character icons in the skill tree somewhere, which I think is a really good tribute for them, and when I was playing it sort of made me smile and remember that show fondly, even though the subject matter is anything but fond. And the crazy part is, these are just some of the changes that are now present in Cyberpunk. I haven't even touched on the Phantom Liberty expansion yet, which, if we're just talking about the massive scope and size of it, I mean, this is CD Projekt Red we're talking about. They know how to do expansions. I've heard the Phantom Liberty expansion will run on average 40 to 50 hours to complete. For most players, the story of the expansion is an exciting one, where your character V becomes a secret government contracted spy trying to save the literal president of the new United States. You get a whole new map location in Dogtown, which is the darkest and seediest underbelly of Night City, which is saying something because we've been to Pacifica, and Pacifica is really a no-go zone, but Pacifica looks like a vacation compared to Dogtown. You get a bunch of new abilities and gear as well in Phantom Liberty. They unlock a whole new part of the skill tree called the Relic Tree, which is these crazy new super abilities that you unlock, and that's thanks to Songbird, who is another character that you end up meeting in the game. But I won't spoil anything with that. And all of these changes I've mentioned are just some of the things that they've added into the game with the new expansion and with the 2.0 update. So if you're concerned about there being a scarcity of content, I promise you, there's plenty to do here. So if you've been a skeptic or hesitant to try Cyberpunk 2077 up until now, I promise you, there's never been a better time to be a new or returning fan of this game. Although, I will say, the developers did strongly recommend you start a brand new save file of the game, since so much has changed in it that it's sure to be a whole different experience than when you last tried it. Take it from me. As someone who loves this game with their whole heart and soul, it deserves the second chance. So try it. You won't be disappointed. That's all for this video, guys. If you like the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. We publish brand new content every day, so there's always something new for you to watch. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.